are about to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
Back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So we're being told that a pilot was at Hollywood Burbank Airport in California, was radioing air traffic control because he wanted to take off. And the response he got, not a usual one, is the tower is closed due to staffing. So this made huge headlines as, you cannot operate an airport without your air traffic control. Our air traffic controllers are paramount. And government shutdowns are affecting air traffic controllers. Now, in addition to that, we already had an air traffic control shortage. So if somebody's not getting paid because of the government shutdown, how much incentive do they have to go to work? I would still go to work because, there's that Government Employee Fair Treatment Act of 2019 that guarantees that they're going to get their money back. But many individuals are kind of hearing the back and forth, where Trump said not all furloughed employees guarantee they get their money back. And he's saying that because he wants the federal employees. One thing that I think frustrates a lot of Americans is the federal employees that get furloughed, they get paid days off. And so they're going to be in no rush they're not going to be pushing their senators to vote the Continuing Resolution Act, which they had voted for in the past, that now Schumer is trying to use, as part of the Schumer shutdown to, make some headway and gain some popularity so he doesn't lose his Senate seat later. But as it pertains to, getting people to pressure their senators, if the federal workers are like, I get, time off and I'm going to get back pay anyway, so I'm in no hurry. Trump is saying that's not guaranteed. Now, Congress did pass this act, so yes, they will get back pay, and they should. But, in order for the shutdown to end, the 8 Democrats, there's 3 Democrats that have voted to keep the government going, but 8 Democrats are kind of holding the line with the other ones. And to make 8 Democrats say, you know what, we're going to vote again to keep the government funded, they might need pressure from their constituents. We're told that 12 FAA facilities saw staffing shortages on Monday. Control towers in Burbank, Phoenix, Denver had staffing triggers, quote unquote, reported in the public FAA operations plan. Other facilities that handle air traffic around airports Newark, New Jersey, Jacksonville, Florida, Chicago, D.C., Indianapolis were also short-staffed. But Burbank Airport shut down at 4:15. Flights could take off and land, but had to follow procedures typically used at small airports without control towers. Delays of more than 2.5 hours, then I guess were reported at one point. Denver saw ground delays in Newark, although they always do, but still. And they say the number of controllers calling out sick have increased since the start of the shutdown. Why? Well, because they're not getting paid. And this is very frustrating. And people are trying to blame. They're trying to blame the Republicans for this. It's the same CR. It's out there, 24 pages, same thing that the Democrats voted on before. They call it a clean one, where there's not anything injected into it. But what the Democrats want to do is use this as an opportunity to make some gains. That's a problem. So, and if they feel like they have nothing to lose, and making this shutdown longer than it has to be, they think they could use that as political pull in the midterms. And say, you see what happened? Look at the longest shutdown in history was under the Republican-held Senate. Well, you need 60 votes. And Republicans don't have 60 votes. I think with the latest vote was 52 to 42. So if you are about to travel, pack your patience. Now, without air traffic controllers, I mean, there's if the money, I guess how it works, you all know this more than I, But I guess if the money's not flowing in, then you can't access the money. You can't pay. I don't know if you've ever worked for a company or a university. For you to, in order to pay for something, it has to come from a spigot. And if the spigots are shut off, it's not like the money's in the bank and anybody could just access it. If there's no money coming in, there's no money. So then Trump has to decide, and the executive branch has to decide what they're going to spend money on. So Trump has announced today that he's going to start eliminating programs, some permanently. I don't want him to say that in form of retaliation. I mean, you don't have to retaliate. I understand people want to retaliate because what the Democrats are doing is ridiculous, but you could just say, look, there's no money. So which are the least important and the least essential things? And then list them. And if it ends up being something that has to do with Sesame Street in Iraq, then so be it. But I guess Democrats want Republicans to extend enhanced Obamacare subsidies as part of any stopgap funding bill. The GOP said we could do this after you do the CR. This isn't the time to start adding extra things, adding more spending, plus something that could, in essential, help pay for illegal immigrants. The Obamacare is a mess. It needs to be fixed. And we keep throwing money into it, and people have horrible deductibles. They're extremely frustrated with how they did lose their doctor. The average person doesn't have a doctor, or if they do, they don't know who their next doctor is going to be because there's just everybody works for corporations now. All of us had to close our practices down because Obamacare messed that up with all the high deductibles. Patients wouldn't pay, insurance company wouldn't pay, so you need to be hired. Otherwise, you can't pay, you can't support your family. And so you have no doctor, you have long waits, you have high deductibles, and it's a mess. Meanwhile, that's what's allegedly holding things up. Stupid Obamacare. We really need to fix it. 1-877 Dr. Daliah, don't go away.
This is an urgent announcement for anyone that's $10,000 or more in debt. Before you make another minimum payment, you need to know there are special programs that can completely free you of your debt. Total Financial Freedom can help you become debt-free in months instead of years. Resolve your credit card debt, signature loans, department store cards, internet loans, and timeshares. Call Total Financial Freedom now at 800-878-6020 for a free consultation. For 16 years, Total Financial Freedom has helped thousands get out of debt. You can feel confident when calling because Total Financial Freedom is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. Battling for years and years, stuck in the endless cycle of minimum payments could take decades. You have the right to get your debt resolved and substantially reduce your monthly payments. Call Total Financial Freedom now at 800-878-6020. That's 800-878-6020. 800-878-6020.
Let's face it, guys, we're living in times where the truth is becoming more suppressed and censorship is increasing at an alarming rate, especially on social media platforms. It's Clyde, and I want to tell you about a safe and secure digital playground we put together just for you. It's Aftermath.media. You get access to thousands of Ground Zero archives and podcasts, along with our private social media groups with your basic membership starting at only $7 a month. Each subscription includes tech support, access to the RSS feeds, along with our own chat room and Telegram channel. In addition, the premium membership includes research study groups, webinars, a document and movie library, a live video stream of Ground Zero, a monthly Zoom chat with me, and other bonus content. Be sure to check out our yearly specials as well. Sign up today while you're thinking about it. Sign up at Aftermath.media. Again, that's Aftermath.media.
right back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Daliah, 1-877 DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to you all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Daliah, Facebook, The Dr. Daliah Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So I had a friend of mine who was identified as gay, who had grown up not being able to come out. And when he did bring out, and he did have conversations with his family, they thought that this could be something that could be quote unquote cured or converted, and had wanted him to go through treatment. And, you know, when I hear that, it sounds barbaric. And as a doctor, anytime, you know, you had parents who are, you know, what should we do? I think he's gay. You support him. That's what you do. Hey, you support the child. You don't make them change into something they're not. You know, you be there to guide them, and people are going to fall in love with who they fall in love with. And by the way, people who have children or you know, teens who are heterosexually inclined, you also need to give them the same advice about protecting themselves. And, you know, your lover, you know, can be somebody who is the most amazing person and life partner, or they could be somebody who stabs you in your sleep. It doesn't matter what the sexual choices they make. It's you know, it's who you fall in love with. And so gay conversion therapy, I am surprised that this still exists. But unfortunately, where we were almost at the point where I thought we got, you know, all of that was now, you know, unfavored, and doctors wouldn't recommend it, and everybody was in unison from the medical community and from public health officials saying, no. You have a child that, you know, is one way, and that doesn't fit with your religious beliefs, and you want to make them not gay, and no, that's cruel to them. You're putting them through something that is not science. There's no scientific basis. Unfortunately, I think it's coming back as we have more and more now medical acceptance of, you know what? We can change kids. We could change kids. If they don't want to be a girl, we could change them to a boy. We could change a boy to a girl. And of course, as a medical professional, I'm like, okay, this is dangerous with conversion therapies. How do you know this isn't dangerous and painful for them and traumatizing from a transgender standpoint? But what they've done is, from a transgender standpoint, they've opened it up to therapy. We could do hormones. We could do surgery. Meanwhile, in the UK, they're like, no, not on minors. The EU is starting to be stricter on not on minors. You know, yet in America, there's this fight. Well, the Supreme Court now has a case in front of them that has to do with conversion therapy, but I don't believe it's transgender conversion. It's, I think, sexuality conversion. And they say the Supreme Court is now debating whether a state can block therapists changing a young person's sexuality or gender identity. And so why would this come up? Well, because I believe there's a counselor in Colorado that says the ban on conversion therapy violates her free speech rights. Colorado has a law from 2019, similar to restrictions in half of the states, because there is, quote, overwhelming evidence that conversion therapy harms young people, increasing risk of depression and suicide. But a lawyer for Counselor Kaylee Childs says the Colorado law infringes on her free speech rights because Child's treatment of patients only involves talking. Colorado Solicitor General cites studies, according to USA Today, that show conversion therapy to be harmful. So where this is starting to, I think, confuse people, and I see doctors kind of falling all over each other on what to do, is if it's been established that taking a child who might not want a heterosexual relationship and might have an affinity towards being in a homosexual relationship if conversion therapy has been proven to be harmful and leading to more depression and suicide, which I think we all agree with, then why are people also looking at the studies of making a child convert with their sex and their gender? And I am worried about a young child's inability to fight off depression and anxiety if they feel like, oh, yeah, I could do this, and I'm going to look like Beyonce, or I'm going to look like Taylor Swift, or I'm going to look like Timothy Chalamet. What's his? Yeah, I mean, I'm going to look like that when we're done. And if they don't feel like they are who they thought they could be, and the conversion failed, who is there for them? Especially if some of these treatments are affecting their fertility, affecting their bone, affecting their clots, vasculature, affecting their hearts, and affecting their body physique. Some people have lost their breasts. They've lost their parts that can help them breastfeed and not only be fertile, but then take care of their young. And so transgender therapy and conversion therapy, I think we could collectively agree on, can be harmful to young children. And you're seeing other countries start to say, look, we just don't have enough data saying the benefits outweigh the risks. But the Supreme Court now, has to rule again. And so people say, well, they're different issues. They're actually not. The conversion of a child to something else, right, from a sexuality or a gender standpoint, can cause harm to them. And so you can't say, all right, well, you cannot convert them and do therapy if they're gay, but you can if they're a boy who wants to be a girl. It can still cause the same trauma. And these kids can't give informed consent. And I find it very frustrating that you have a child that is in that much pain. Now, honestly, body dysmorphic or gender dysphoria, it's rare. True gender dysphoria is rare. And these people, they suffer. Waking up going, I'm in the wrong body. This isn't my body. Very painful what they go through. And it's not easy. But now we have, you're born this way. You don't have to be. We could change you. You're gay. We could change you to not being gay. No, we can't. That's not medically sound. Well, we can make you a girl. We can make you a boy. If we get rid of the stereotypes, you wanting to be who you want to be, is something that makes America great. But we're talking about children. Adults could do whatever they want. And I have transgender individuals in my family who are happy. They're soaring. They're actually doing better than I think they ever have. And they're glowing and they're happy. But conversion therapy, whether it's for sexuality or gender, can cause harm in a child. And it blows my mind that here we are now at the Supreme Court level, because I thought we all collectively agreed that trying to make a child who could be gay not gay anymore was cruel. Trying to make a child who's a girl into a boy, and promising, false hope that they will be able to, be like any other girl or boy is from a fertility standpoint and from we don't understand that if they don't get their goals met, how traumatizing that can be. But I think it's because we're really lacking in terms of our mental health. Not everybody who wants to be fitting the stereotype of boy and girl, and I didn't want to be the stereotypical girl. I didn't like Barbies. I didn't like dresses. I like playing with the guys. I like sports. But I didn't necessarily want to be a boy. And I'm glad I was a girl. I just wanted to do boy stuff. I mean, it's a spectrum of things. But if my parents made me go to a doctor to make me like Barbies or to make me want to wear dresses, that would have been cruel. And thank God they didn't. So there's this fine line that has already now been septated into two separate things where conversion therapy for sexuality is bad, but conversion therapy for gender is good. And it's confusing, and now it's going to be at the courts. And the courts are going to decide what's the safest thing for kids. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. Don't go away. Hey guys, it's Dr. Daliah. Fantasy football season is coming, but sadly, too many of you are taking the bench while the country takes part in one of the most exciting and lucrative industries out there. Don't know how to play? Well, huddle up and listen. Paul Kalikas and I have written a fantasy football pocket guide for beginners. This book walks you through the basics and shows you how simple and lucrative joining or creating a fantasy football team can be. Read our fantasy football pocket guide for beginners found on Amazon or follow the links on X and Facebook. That's Fantasy Football Pocket Guides for Beginners. Don't be left out.
Lisa Wolf here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you. And be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So what's in your prenup? I don't have a prenup. And it's funny because you hear of these things that are in people's prenups, and wow, I would have never thought of that. I don't have a prenup, and I'm glad. I had no money. My husband really didn't have anything. I was working multiple part-time jobs. I think I was waiting tables when I decided to start dating him again. I knew him, but I was dating somebody else, and he wasn't ready to settle down. Then it wasn't until a few years later that we decided to hook up and start dating, and then we got engaged pretty quickly, and then we got married 10 months later, because when you're in medical school, you don't really have a lot of time off. And my biological clock was ticking. And I'm like, well, I'm going to have to start, our family at this time, and luckily we were able to get everything done along a timeline that's kind of impossible for a female medical student, and then intern and resident. But we were lucky, but signed a prenup. And if God forbid anything did happen and Corey decided to leave me, which I wouldn't blame him. I'm not the easiest person to live with. We split everything. And, prenups, though, are a good idea. I mean, I feel like I'm pretty level-headed. I don't, if God forbid, let's say he and I fight or he cheats or whatever, and, I'm mad at him, I don't want the kids looking at me as evil. So I would want to look cool. So I would be like, look, okay, you need access to the kids. You need, you're their father. Well, I love you, even though we're no longer married. I love you, and let's make this as easy as possible. So I'm thinking to myself, that's how it would go. So it would be a piece of cake. But what I've seen my friends go through, and what you've seen in real life, is no, the lawyers get involved. And then they say, you didn't think about this. You didn't think about this. You need to protect yourself. What if she is not cool in a few months? What if she changes her mind? You need to ask for this. Well, then it starts to escalate. Well, I want this. Well, I want this. Well, then your lawyer is saying, well, don't be stupid. And I'm like, why can't we just have one lawyer that works for both of us, and let's just make this easy? Well, if you don't have a prenup, this is where it starts to, get more complicated. And so, we have one couple friend where it started out really calm and chill. And by the time they got done, they lost nearly $1 million between the lawyers made the money. I don't know how they found the money, but they did. And so prenups are pretty important. But when you look at some of these prenups of these celebrities, you're like, say what? So the latest celebrity breakup is the Nicole Kidman-Keith Urban breakup. And they did have a prenup. They've been married 19 years. And we don't know exactly why, but we just, I guess irreconcilable differences, who knows? But Nicole Kidman formally filed her divorce petition last week. And I guess they do have a prenup. They own, I guess, a combined fortune of $325 million. And back in 2006, when they got married, in their prenup, Keith Urban gets $600,000 to $900,000 a year for every year of marriage. Well, with 19 years, that's anywhere between 11 mil and 17 million. Can you imagine my husband saying, I need money for every year I'm married to you? I need some money. So I'm like paying him to be married to me. Maybe that would have been a good idea, because who knows if he'll ever leave me. I hope he doesn't. There's also a cocaine clause, which meant Keith Urban, who had struggled with drugs in his past, only got the money if he stayed clean. Now, if, hopefully nobody lies and says, oh, well, he did this and he did this. But if he stayed off drugs, he gets the money. But I guess Kate Holmes, who also married Tom Cruise, I think they had a prenup. And I think it restricted her spending habits and wardrobe. And I guess the covenant would only pay out monetary compensation based on the number of children the couple had. It would award Katie Holmes $3 million for every year she stayed married to Cruise, a mansion in Montecito and half his fortune if she managed to stay the course for 11 years. I think she only made it 6 years being married to him. Beyonce and Jay-Z's prenup reportedly gives her $1 million for every year they stay married up to 15 years and $5 million per child. And Beyonce was apparently to be awarded $10 million if Jay-Z left in 2 years. So if the marriage failed in 2 years, she'd get $10 million. Kim Kardashian's prenup. This is being reported by, hold on, I want to give credit where credit's due, The Telegraph. How they know all this is beyond me. They say Kim Kardashian's prenup with Kanye West, or Ye, also awarded $1 million per year of marriage. The couple married in 2014, divorced in 2022, and reportedly stipulated that Kim's mother, Kris Jenner, could not make any career decisions that could impact the couple. Now, that's interesting. Keeping the mother and the mother-in-law out of the marriage. That is, I think, a big one. I didn't even think about that. Because honestly, if I would have done a prenup, it wouldn't have had anything to do with money. It would have had to do with, my mom, his mom, and keeping them out of the... That's actually very enticing. Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones's prenup ahead of their 2000 wedding reportedly entitled her to $2.8 million for every year of marriage, plus a straying fee of $5 million if Michael Douglas ever cheated on her. He, however, would retain sole ownership of any wedding gifts valued at more than $12,000. Okay, So rapper Ice-T and his wife Coco Austin, they have prenups that gives him the rights to Austin's breast and buttock implants should they divorce. Well, that's interesting. What would you do with them? I guess she has to have them surgically removed. So Kidman and Urban are in Tennessee, so it's, I think, an equal distribution state. So marital property is divided fairly, but not necessarily equally. So, when you look at some of these things, and I don't want to go into any more of these, oh, wait, there was a wait. Oh, now this, I would have failed. Apparently, Jessica Simpson and Tony Romo's prenup reportedly barred her from weighing over 135 pounds and required her to pay him $500,000 for every pound she gained. Now, I don't think they ever got married. I think they broke up in 2009. But, oh, my gosh, a prenup saying if you gained weight, I would be broke. I mean, luckily, we don't have that kind of money. But can you imagine if I gain $500,000 for every pound? I don't think there's a bank big enough to cover that. That's crazy. So I guess there's some crazy stuff with prenups. We talked about on the show, how do you bring it up? If you have assets and you've come from a family where divorces are bad, and so you want to have a prenup, how do you bring it up? Well, it's actually not that difficult. You don't want to call it a prenup necessarily. Maybe that term has been kind of tarnished, but you could say, look, I don't ever plan on leaving you. You never plan on leaving me, but God forbid something happens. We should have something down there, whether, it's for our medical, whether it's for our what happens with the kids, but we should have something laid out while we're all level-headed and before any lawyers, they'll take over. What is it that you would want? God forbid something happens. To us, who knows? I go crazy or whatever. But what should we have that in place? And I think somebody who's calm and rational, level-headed would be like, I think that's a good idea. Because God forbid we do have to break up. We got to make it as easy as possible. Look at Tom Brady and Giselle. They're bullshit. They're and maybe it's also they kept the media out of it, but it looked like they went through a fairly painless divorce because they had all their ducks in a row. But wow, gosh, if there was that wait clause, I'd be so screwed. 1-877 Doc Dolly, don't go away.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799 and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
As an organ donor, your story doesn't have to end. The good in you can live on. In fact, you could save up to 8 lives and restore sight and health for many more. Sign up right now online as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. You'll be happy you did. And just maybe, someone else will be happy too. Go to organdonor.gov. It saves lives. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
Dr. Daliah here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out. Back in the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Dali, 1-877 DOCDALI. So one of my listeners is pretty frustrated with her husband, anonymous, so I'm not going to say her name, because her husband has the opportunity to take a management position in the company he works for, and he doesn't want to do it. So she thinks he's being lazy. It would be more money, and so she's kind of asking for advice on, how to bring that up and tell her husband to get off his butt. Meanwhile, I think I'm on the husband's side on this. I've turned down management jobs. The problem with management is there's a lot of problems with management. And so maybe in the short term it's good, but in the long term, and if you need to play the long game, sometimes that management job could really hurt you. It's interesting. I waited tables when I was in medical school. I waited tables at Tony Roma's on Virginia Street in Reno, Nevada. And I think the restaurant's closed since then. That's what happens when you hire waitresses like me. And there was a management job. And we were told as waiters and waitresses that, there's going to be a management job. Some of us might want to consider it and put our name in. Nobody was putting their name in. And I wasn't going to have time to be a manager because you had to put in 8 hours. And I was just working, the swing shift night dinner service. So I'm like, guys, come on. It's more money. Like, no, it's not. One, you got to work with corporations. And two, you don't get the tips. And they weren't wrong about that because I always split my tips with the bussers. You didn't split tips with management. And they're like, you actually make more money waiting tables than being manager. It's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I mean, nowadays, some restaurants, managers get a piece. But I was like, okay. And so, Daliah, do you want to be manager? No, I don't. I will pass. Never thought I would pass up on a management position because I'm thinking, all right, well, it helps your resume. Now you have manager on your resume. And no. The other thing, too, is I've worked for places where when there is a management position available, you need to stop and go, why is that position open? What happened to that person? And you'll notice some of these management positions keep flipping. Whereas when you're kind of boots on the ground, it might be safer. A question I commonly get, my show, I do live in the mornings, 9 to 11 Pacific Standard Time. Yet many affiliates play me later. And I've had listeners say, why aren't you having them play you in the morning? And I'm like, because I don't want to wake the sleeping giant. These morning shows flip around a lot. There's a lot. Yet, if I'm in a good spot at night and it's solid, I have longevity. And I learned that. When I was younger, I might have been like, no, I need to get the best spot. I need to get no. I think the best spot is exactly where I'm in because I want longevity. I want the long game. But now what if you are told you're up, we need a manager, it's you. And you're like, oh, hell no. Well, one of the reasons why management jobs are difficult is because you're trying to manage people and lead. Now, some of us are fantastic leaders. And I've tried to lead by example. But when you have other individuals that are like, no, I don't want to do the work, it's frustrating. I led projects where all I got was, oh, I don't want to do that. That's too much work. You don't have to do it that way. Mediocrity is fine. It doesn't have to be 100%. It can be 60%. And I'm not a micromanager, and I'm not a control freak. But if I'm working with customers or if I'm working with a group of individuals, I can't decide and triage who I'm going to be half-assed with. And I'm like, there's a process where we could do this right. It's not really that hard. But when you're dealing with people who haven't worked and and half-ass was the mantra or the work anthem, they might not work. And if you don't have the ability to get a whole new team, that's a problem. It's interesting. One of our physician assistants we hired years ago, she said what really attracted our office to her is everywhere she worked, she had no autonomy. And she said she was stuck with staff that would never get fired. And if the staff stunk and was, could possibly hurt her patients, there was nobody to tell and nobody would do anything. And I'm like, we have you hire whoever you want because we trust you. You want to do the best job possible. And in fact, there's been studies showing that many employees do not want to become managers. In fact, research shows only 30% of workers want to become managers. This is according to research from LinkedIn, a survey of over 10,000 LinkedIn users. Nearly 7 in 10 said they would leave their job if they had a bad manager. Only 30% said they would want to become a people manager within the next few years. Global consulting firm West Monroe agrees with the theory of nobody showed them how to lead effectively. They surveyed 500 managers and found that 66% of those received 8 hours or less of manager training. Of those who had been managers for less than a year, a stunning 43% had received no training at all. Well, but here's the thing. I've seen, I mean, true leadership training and, where you lead yourself and others and lead by example and have good work ethic. If you have somebody calling out, if you have somebody stealing, if you have somebody who creates a toxic environment, you really have to clean house. And in fact, unfortunately, the cancer comes back. It's like a contaminated Petri dish. You could only do so much. You can't cut out the contaminant. You have to basically start over with a new Petri dish. And I had coworkers tell me, look, just, clock in, clock out. And don't try and do a good job because it's not going to be appreciated and you're going to ping the radar. And I'm like, but people are asking for help. I'm not just coming in making changes. There's a problem. Let me fix it. And I can't go into too much detail, but the population of people that needed help, were really, really grateful. And I would just do it on my own time. But that to me that means just don't work there. You aren't going to be able to fix stupid and fix lazy. So would I manage other doctors? Absolutely not. Would I manage, other radio hosts? No. Because I'm the type of person that if something is not getting done, I want to fix it. And then I would just jump in and do it myself. In fact, running a medical office, I would delegate. I had managers, I trusted them, and then I would see they weren't doing the job right. Well, in medicine, you can't be anything than 100%. Now, I didn't make my staff do that. I would pick up if they were 80% or 79%, fine. But if I had a nurse telling me that the pregnancy test was negative and it was positive, come on, I needed to teach you this. You can't be giving me wrong test results. And it was really, really hard to manage a medical office because when I did catch lazy or somebody stealing, or there really wasn't any other option but firing them. One of my nurses stole the flu shots, stole needles, and not the number of needles that she should have also taken, which means I'm worried she reused needles. And then she went to a part of the city trying to pretend to be me and selling flu shots. Luckily, I didn't have to fire her because she was already arrested. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. Don't go away.
Can you believe, with all the recent violent protests, looting, and destruction, some areas are considering either defunding or abolishing the police? At a time when America's neighborhoods need the protection of police the most, some elected officials would rather create more chaos by playing politics. If you're sick of elected officials caving in to demands of the radical left, you're not alone. It's time we stand up and declare our support for local police. The majority of police officers are important partners in protecting our God-given rights. If you prefer freedom over chaos, then learn how you can help protect the local police that serve your community. Call today and request your free Support Your Local Police info packet. Dial 800-JBS-USA1. That's 800-JBS-USA1. Request your free Support Your Local Police info packet by calling 800-JBS-USA1 today.